here with Mike Barron, Mike Barron. He only is called Michael when he's in trouble. Anyway, here we go. Take it away, Mike.
Good morning, folks. I thought today we'd talk about historical fiction. And by that, I don't mean novels that are set in a certain age, but novels that actually deal with the real events that happened, novelizations of history. And there are many, many fine writers working in this field. And to my mind, the best of them all is Con Iggulden. Con Iggulden is alive today. He writes like a maniac. I don't know how these people turn out all these words every year. Well, yes, I do. They love what they do and they're compulsive about it. But 3 or 4 years ago, I picked up one of his novels at a little free library. It was called The Wolf of the Plains, and was the first in a 5-novel history of Genghis Khan. And by that I mean that his novels stuck to historical facts, that he was trying to tell what actually happened in a fictional voice, that is, to make it entertaining as well as interesting. I could not put it down. I spent the whole summer reading those books, all 5 novels. And one thing about Iggulden is he does his research. He went to Mongolia. He lived in a yurt. He saw the sites where Genghis Khan besieged Chinese cities. I don't know if he learned Mongolian, but he puts an immense amount of work into getting the facts right. And that's what distinguishes good historical fiction from just novels that are set in a certain period, like Westerns. Now, the point is that the further back you go in time to write your historical fiction, the more research you have to do. And it's not just what happened. It's also the language that they used. Now, Mr. Iggulden didn't pretend to imitate the way they actually spoke in the 11th century, but he became familiar with the terms they used, such as Igon, which was Genghis Khan's term for his personal bodyguard, and many other terms that have fallen from habit today, and you'd have to look them up. When I was done with Genghis Khan, I picked up the first novel in his Julius Caesar series, a 5-volume set that covers the whole life of Caesar, from when he was a boy to when he was assassinated. Again, all the facts are spot on. More importantly, it's so readable, you cannot put it down. And that's what distinguishes superb historical fiction from amateur efforts. I can't think of any amateur efforts, because if I'm reading a book and I don't like it, I put it down, I don't finish it. Now, Con Iggulden is not alone. You may have heard of Bernard Cornwell, who's another superb historical novelist who deals with real life events and real characters. I've read a number of his books. They're very lively. And one of his books was turned into a series on Netflix called The Last Kingdom. I can't recommend it too highly. If you're looking for a series to watch that's absolutely gripping in every scene, tune into The Last Kingdom. It follows the fight for the leadership of England in the 9th century, and it's all based on facts, on what actually happened. And that's one of the best ways to learn history, is reading one of these two guys, Con Iggulden or Bernard Cornwell. I also have to mention Robert Harris, who's a superb novelist. His novel, Conclave, about choosing a pope, has been turned into a movie. It's in theaters right now. I will see it because I'm reading the book Conclave. Robert Harris has also written 3 novels featuring Cicero, from Cicero's point of view, from the 1st century AD. And I recommend those very highly. Robert Harris is another guy with a gifted narrative voice, so that you're constantly entertained and you're not conscious of any artifice, because you're so absorbed in the story, you're going to plow right through till you get to the end, and then you're going to say, where's the next book? And that's what I look for in a great historical novelist. Now, one of the greatest, and I'm sure everybody has heard of this guy, is James Mitchner. This is a book about the history of Colorado. The thing about Mitchner is it starts in the Jurassic period with a discussion of dinosaurs, and it goes forward from there. So you have to read about 10,000 words before you get to the first human. Now, Mitchner does his homework too. Every historical fact is dead on accurate. He had a team of researchers working with him who were able to bring these books to life. The other thing to note is Mitchner writes big. Now, I read this book, I read 80% of the book, and then I got past all the good parts and I set it down. So when people ask me what I'm reading, I say, Mitchner's Centennial, day 2,485. I'm just joking about that. I finished a lot of his books, and they're fascinating. What's wonderful about this guy is, even though these books are enormous, it's probably 250,000 words. He wrote a lot of them. Of course, Mitchner is no longer with us, but a number of his books I've read and can comment on. I'll just wing it here. One is The Source, which is about the birth of civilization in the Middle East, in the area that's now under dispute and has been for hundreds of years. And it covers the birth of Christ, the growth of Christianity, as well as the concomitant history of Islam on the march. And it brings us up to the modern state of Israel. Another one that I recommend is Mexico, which starts centuries ago, again with the dinosaurs, but brings you up to speed quickly. I think that Mexico is unique among Mitchner's books because it'll make you laugh. He has a sense of humor in that one, and you'd search far and wide to find humor in his other books, but they're all highly readable. And if you want to learn history, there's no more painless way than reading Mitchner. Finally, we come to one of the greatest novels I've ever read. This is the story of Henry Morton Stanley's last desperate expedition up the Congo to Sudan to rescue the leader of the Sudan at the time, who was under siege by Arab forces, most notably the Mahdi. The Mahdi was the name of a radical Muslim leader who commanded thousands of soldiers in the late 19th century and used them to reconquest any land that had been lost in the previous century. Forbath does his research. This is dead on accurate in every way. But more than that, the story is fascinating. You cannot put it down. And this is not the only historical novel Forbath has written. I recommend anything by Forbath. This is one of the greatest books I've ever read, and I'm probably going to reread it one of these days. Now, a word about fiction that's not historically accurate. If you're going to write a book set in the 17th century, you still have to study the language so that when your characters speak, they sound period correct. The further back you go, the harder that's going to be. Well, at least the research is going to be harder. That doesn't mean that you have to narrate it in an old-fashioned voice. But if you're writing a Sherlock Holmes pastiche, which is what we call any Sherlock Holmes story not written by Conan Doyle, you have to get the Victorian voice down cold, because that's so much a part of the Sherlock Holmes body of work, which is mostly narrated by Dr. John Watson. My latest graphic novel, Sherlock Holmes Leviathan, in which Sherlock Holmes teams up with Captain Nemo to save the world, I had to steep myself in Conan Doyle and many other Sherlock Holmes writers so that I got that narrative voice down cold. That's, when I say narrative voice, I mean the way they talked in the Victorian era. It's not how they talk today. They talked obliquely. They didn't look at things too closely. They didn't swear. Everything was polite. They were very conscious of their class. The lower classes are constantly tugging their forelock and saying, yes, sir, and no, sir. When you read these stories, you'll understand what I mean. They have a unique voice. And a lot of people are attracted to that voice because it's similar to what we call a cozy murder mystery. And as many of my viewers know, a cozy is a murder mystery in which there's no blood, there's no guts, but the mystery is solved usually by a little old lady in a sitting room serving tea. I'm thinking of Agatha Christie, uh, but also the Nero Wolfe novels, which always contain great menus. Uh, the Westerns are an exception to this rule. And the reason is that we're so steeped in the narrative of the Western because they dominated our cinema for so long that people who are Western fans can probably sit down and write a convincing Western right now if they have any gift of gab, if they know how to tell a story, because we've all absorbed the language of the West, the cayuse, the gunslinger, fill your hand, that sort of thing. And that's one of the reasons Westerns are so popular. Another reason is most of them are based on the same pattern, which is revenge. The hero is wronged in the first act, and the second and third acts are consumed with the hero gaining vengeance, or at least justice in this case. So that's my 2 cents on historical novels. Those are the writers I recommend. And if you're thinking of writing a historical novel, you can't do too much research. Just make sure it's fun. And there are enough good writers about history, or just writing straight history, that it should be fun.
Right. Very informative. Any other thoughts?
Well, as usual, I recommend you carry a tab and a pen with you wherever you go to write down whatever thoughts you have. It's very active writing it down, fixes it in your memory. A lot of people say, "Oh, I'll just record that on my phone," and they say a few words into the phone, and then it tends to get lost in the electronic morass.
Very true. Yes, I can relate to that. I think I have like 30,000 pictures on my phone. All right, and what's the update on the Sherlock Holmes Leviathan crowdfunding?
Well, we have about a little less than 2 weeks left to go. If you like Sherlock Holmes, you're going to love this book. You can get it at baroncomics.com. I recommend using either Fund My Comic or Kickstarter because Indiegogo seems to be shadow banning us again, as they are so many other creators. I don't expect that platform to last for long.
All right, well, very good. Thank you. Stay tuned.